party, the fascist party, has the right to tell you what to do. And so Mussolini declared war on Freemasonry, and he sent his black shirted thugs to smash up the lodges in Florence, and 137 leading Freemasons were left bleeding to death after the thugs went in and attacked them all. I mean, these people were senators, these people were professors, these people were judges, and these fascist thugs just clubbed them to death. You know, that's what fascism is about. And it was the same in Franco's Spain, where the fascist, the phalangists, who were like the thugs behind Spanish fascism, targeted the Freemasonic lodges and killed them. And wherever the Nazis went, they rounded them up and sent them to concentration camps, because their ideology was based on what they called the Judeo-Masonic conspiracy. Evil forces, Jews and Freemasons, they're out to cause trouble, so we've got to kill them all. Well, I'm the opposite. I think actually what the Freemasons have been doing over the last 300 years is trying to elevate humanity to an intellectual place of love, equality, liberty, and fraternity. And the forces that oppose that, things like extreme right-wing fascism and racism and, kind of Trumpist and Putinist ideology, which we're seeing Modi, sadly, is following in India, and even Netanyahu in Israel is following this right-wing, narrow-minded agenda. Well, the Grand Orient stands as a beacon of light opposing to all that. And long may it last. As Macron says, vive la République. Voila. Okay, those are the two. Is that... oh no, yeah, I've done them both. Yeah. So what I'm saying is the love element that Mo Tsu was promoting, kind of in the modern world, it lives in all the traditions, but in Freemasonry it lives as well. And to want to kill them like the Nazis did is just bad form, as we say in English. Yeah. Right, okay. We'll do one more.
Okay, thank you already. Could you choose me one, the first?
How about doing number 70 in the middle? Humanism. We haven't done many from humanism. We'll do Renaissance Humanism.
Super. And my side, I choose for philosophy, feminism and masculinism. 148.
Right. Okay, that's fun. So the earliest one is the Renaissance one, number 70. So humanism is a whole tradition in its own right. It came into use during the Italian Renaissance. The idea of being a humanist is that you studied in detail the sources of knowledge. You learned Latin and Greek, you read the Bible in the original languages, you read Cicero, you read Plato, and humanism meant to be a learned person, right? I think we did it when we were looking at humanism before we started filming these meetings, and so the universities became bastions of humanism in that sense. In Florence, they founded the Academy of Florence, which was like the think tank for Renaissance humanism, because they were translating the works of Plato, which had just come back into fashion and the texts had been discovered. But they also got hold of the Hermetic scriptures. It was funded by the Medici, a great wealthy banking family in Florence. And he got the best scholars of the day to come and translate these works. Marsilio Ficino and a guy called Pico della Mirandola. They realised that all knowledge is universal. They were like the forerunners of the periodic table of the world's philosophies and religions. I couldn't have done this table without the Florence Academy. Right? And when I discovered them doing my degree, I was spent part of it at the Warburg Institute at the University of London, which is an amazing scholarly institution. And they study in detail the Renaissance era. I used to go to lectures and seminars there and stuff, and their library is absolutely world class. These Florentine Renaissance humanists were thinking exactly as I do. They were realizing the universality of knowledge and how every tradition is important. It shouldn't be ours is better than yours. It's which bit of the jigsaw puzzle have you got, and would you like to see which bits we've got, and can we compare and contrast and find a way of locking them together so we can do something useful for humanity, you know. And so it inspired a lot of progress in the arts. This was the flourishing of the Renaissance artistic tradition, people like Raphael and all the great masters of Renaissance painting, and they were discovering new techniques, how to paint with perspective, how to get exactly the right shades, and you know, they were discovering anatomy. They were Vesalius did a map of the entire body using anatomy in detail for the first time, to actually, like, what are we humans? Where do we, you know, what's inside us? All these different organs and stuff. Leonardo da Vinci was one of these Renaissance artists who was a polymath who combined his love of science, of the visual beauty of the world, of art, of colour. He spent days and days just painting drapery to get the effects right, the shading, the colour. You know, I've read books about his intellectual journey as a young man. I've also been to an exhibition based on a manuscript they found of Da Vinci. He was very learned in Islamic sources. He had a library with ancient Islamic mathematical and scientific works as well, which most people don't realise. The Renaissance was truly universal, and he was an example of that. And he was friends with the Medicis. Had a chap working for them called Americo de Vespucci, who was jack of all trades, like they all were, a bit of a polymath, sometimes in Florence. And then they sent him off on a shipping expedition, and he gave his name to America. America is named after Americo de Vespucci. So I always say that the genius of the Americas is that Renaissance humanism that flourished in Florence. I'd love to make a film about Amerigo de Vespucci and his esoteric work. You know, I don't think it's coincidental that his name went to America. In France here, our greatest king, Francis I, was a Renaissance genius as well. He was a friend and patron of Leonardo da Vinci. He knew all about the Italian Renaissance. He wanted it to come to France. And he funded Leonardo to come at the end of his life, to come and live in France. And he went to live in Amboise, close to the royal chateau. And that's where Leonardo died, tragically, but it happens to all of us. And he's buried there. I went to pay my respects to his graveside when I moved here. And we had a day celebrating Leonardo da Vinci's work and life. And it was Francis I that sent another sailor expedition, which first discovered and mapped Manhattan and New York harbour. What became New York was discovered by the French, which is, you know, interesting. I argue that if America falls into the hands of total Trump fascist types, I think Manhattan and New York should be able to declare that they're part of France legally. We'll welcome them back because they are quite, great people, the New Yorkers. So, yeah, Renaissance humanism. In England, the great thinker there was a man called John Dee, who used to work at the courts of Queen Elizabeth I. That was our Renaissance time. It's the best time to be English, or at that time. And it was the time of Sir Francis Bacon, who was Dee's protege in many ways, who founded scientific method. These people were thinking through what is knowledge and how can we extend the boundaries of knowledge, not just by sending ships around and doing like Francis Drake did, circumnavigating the globe. And he, by the way, went to John Dee to get the maps before he did his world tour. And Francis Drake, founded the the harbour, or discovered the harbour of San Francisco. I think he called it New Albion, or always a romantic. No, those were great times to be alive. And Dee was a sort of magus. He was like a one-man Florentine Academy in London. And when I used to live in London, I had an allotment opposite where he's buried at Mortlake Church. He was an Anglican, like me, but he was a polymathic intellectual genius, you know. And Dee was... a man called John Aubrey wrote his life story in a thing called Brief Lives. And it's very touching, the entry on John Dee, because he interviewed people that knew him. There was still like an old lady around who'd been his maid or something, or neighbour, and he asked, what was Dee like as a person then? She said, he was a mighty good man. He was always trying to make peace between people that were quarrelling. He was a mighty good man. And I love that, you know. He was also trying to talk to angels, and he was a pioneer of parapsychology and vertical, you know, communications. He was a kind of a shaman, a Christian shaman, if you want. And one of the founders and forerunners of what later grew into Freemasonry with Francis Bacon. So that's Renaissance Humanism, and, you know, it's really interesting. Now, to compare that, what was the one you want me to compare that with?
Feminism and Masculinism.
Ah, yes. Okay, this is sort of fast forward. This is the whole feminist tradition in thought. Simone de Beauvoir, the people really in the last 100 years or more that are saying, "Oh, what about the women?" You know, because that's why women have their own column in my Universal Dictionary of Saints and Sages, because women are amazing. I had an amazing mother. I'm only a philosopher because my mother was an intellectual and a university-educated woman who went in the 1930s to get her degree, when women didn't do that normally in Britain, or in most places. They did in the Renaissance, by the way, and one thing I should say is that the Renaissance was the rebirth of women as well, symbolised by the great painting of Aphrodite rising out of the waves. But women became professors, they were teachers at the University of Bologna, they were philosophers and scholars in Italy from that Renaissance time onwards. I mean, Leonardo's mother was an amazing woman. We don't really know much about her, but I've done some research on it from Vinci. So yeah, behind every great man is a great woman, and often they're written out of history. So what the feminists were saying is, like, give women their due, let them come out of the closet and be loved and appreciated, not just for being mothers, but for their own creative work, you know, for being scholars and mathematicians and sages. And that's really what the ancient Greeks were doing in the time of Pythagoras. Women, his wife and daughters, they were all philosophers too, equal, you know. I think you can judge the intelligence of a society if it has equality for the genders and enables you to flourish and become wise, whether you're male or female. You know, it shouldn't matter. Because I believe in reincarnation, like any good Pythagorean or Druid, I think we've all been different genders over many lifetimes. Right? I think the one you happen to be in at the moment is the one you were dealt with as a card from the gods. You chose to be. I chose to be a man, and I'm quite happy being a man. You know, it's quite fun. I don't personally see the need to change that. You know, that seems to me impatience to want to tinker around and change my gender. I mean, I know it's become a sort of fashion, but I think it shows impatience. I think stick with the gender you've got. Next life, you can choose, you can change, be a woman next time. You know, I'm sure I've been both over the years. The masculine traditions arose later than the feminist traditions. The feminist traditions were quite strong and powerful in the 60s, 1970s, 1980s. I read a book called The Paradise Papers in the 1980s, which is about the lost goddess traditions, the female side of God, if you want. And I've been studying theology and philosophy and all that, and it hit me like a bombshell. You know, well, these goddess traditions are amazing. Like, why don't they teach you this in Bible class? because it was explaining how the goddess gets such a bad press in the Bible as such. And it made me realise you have to read the Bible critically. It's an amazing book by a woman called Mo Tsu. In America it was translated into When God Was a Woman, which is a typical American buzz phrase, but the Paradise Papers is the title in English. And yeah, it was a classic feminist text, right, back in the day. And I think if people read and understood that the goddess traditions are as ancient as the masculinist traditions of God, there'd be peace between the religions immediately. I've just watched an amazing documentary about witchcraft and Diana and Lucifer and the ancient traditions of the Dianic traditions of witchcraft, whereby God was originally a woman, Diana, who's lonely. And in their creation story, and this goes back to a witch in Tuscany in the 1200s called Aradia, she conjures up Lucifer, the light god, to be her consort because she's lonely. You know, and that's a whole different kind of creation story, isn't it? The goddess is the first, who out of love, then her longing creates the dawn, and then the sun comes up, and that's Lucifer, the light bringer. And it's a really beautiful documentary about witchcraft made back in the 70s in black and white in English television days. So that's about the importance of the goddess tradition, because the witchcraft traditions have kept that alive, in secret, as did the Druids. And I discovered all this in London in the 80s. And I thought, well, why doesn't everybody know that this is the secret of peace, isn't it? I think it is. So I also discovered Robert Bly and other intellectuals who said, okay, the goddess is really important. We love you feminists. We love all of them. But the blokes need to recover their own god energy. We to match you, Diana types, we need to be proper strong blokes. Not weak wimps kind of thing. I think some men made the mistake of thinking that to honour the goddess, we should all become like, I don't know, sort of narcissistic wimps and not say boo to a goose. No, find your proper masculinity, which can meet and match the femininity, and then you get the sparks flying. And this box is all about that complexity. And so Robert Bly and others started doing workshops with men, trying to get men, because I think in the 60s and 70s, a lot of men felt guilty for being men. It's like, oh, we've done terrible things to women all these years. We didn't give them a place at the table and didn't let them join in with our rituals, and oh dear, dear, dear. And so they got really into guilt. But ultimately, that guilt isn't very productive. What we should be saying is, okay, as men, we're going to change. We're going to be egalitarian. We're going to honour and respect both genders, and we're going to build a society based on mutual love and respect, not the suppression of one gender by another. And so the men's movement is important, and that's in this box as well. And yeah, I think that whole perspective, and one should read Simone de Beauvoir's work about this. She was the consort of Sartre, the philosopher, and she felt strongly that women need to, be honoured in society. I don't think all that would have been possible without the Italian Renaissance and the European Renaissance, because what was being reborn was this notion of love, this notion of beauty between men and women. The wonderful sculptures and paintings of the Renaissance, the male form, the female form, came out of the closet, and we could honour and respect each other. We see it in Shakespeare's work, and he was the Renaissance genius in England, probably a friend of John Dee as well. They certainly met. And Shakespeare obviously spent time in Italy and France. So so the work carries on. We have to embody that genius now. The Renaissance genius, the other thing I want to just say, is that they're all encompassing. Someone like Shakespeare It was the breadth of mind that goes into the plays. And the same with Leonardo, he was a polymath, right? I believe we should all be entitled to be polymaths in our education system. And that to me is the beauty of philosophy. The table is there for us all to learn all of it. It's a lifetime's work to learn it all and go into detail. But that's our birthright. Every child in a school, in the lycée in France, or in the grammar schools, or secondary moderns, or private schools in Britain, should have the table on their wall. So at least they know what's available. And instead of specialising too early in education, we should learn the whole lot whilst we can when we're young. And then the sky's the limit. You can be a computer programmer, a dancer, a musician, a poet, whatever, a linguist. And why not do it all? Because and especially with AI coming on stream, we're going to be able to use these computers that we've invented to do a lot of the spade work and just do the Epicurean pleasuring in the intellectual graft that the AI bots are going to do for us. So I can't wait to put all this through the AI and say, okay, who were the great geniuses on a par with Leonardo da Vinci and then give them a list of boxes, and the AI bot will say, they'll know. And okay, play me the video. Where's who made the documentary about them? Like, where's the documentary about Mo Tsu and so on? And if not, well, can you go and make one? And the AI guy will be able to go and do that and make a documentary, pulling images from the web, like 1 million images of Mo Tsu. And it's going to happen in the next 10 years. And then we, the savants, can sit back and be Epicureans and enjoy it all and watch the show. That's the plan. And make peace, Putin by then hopefully will have died down and gone back to university. He ought to go and study basic ethics and all his type. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Is that all right?
Super.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much for asking those questions. And I hope you've enjoyed having the cat on your lap. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go and switch off. I'm going to disturb the cat.